Good afternoon. Hi, I'm Angie Chandler, and I'm Executive Director of the Blue Ridge National Heritage Area. Thank you for joining the first in a series of 3 online workshops entitled The Trail Ahead, Current Trends and Innovations in the Music Industry. I want to welcome you to our first session, Cutting Through the Noise, Harnessing the Power of Social Media. It's brought to you by the Heritage Area in partnership with First Citizens Bank with support from the North Carolina Arts Council. Before we start, a few housekeeping items for you. You will be able to see the presenters on the workshop, but we cannot see you. And everyone other than the panelists are muted. So if you have questions, please use the chat function on Zoom and also on Facebook Live. We have folks who are monitoring those chats for your questions, and we hope you will certainly ask a lot of questions of the group. We are also recording the session, and we're going to be adding it to the Blue Ridge National Heritage Area website partner section, as well as the Blue Ridge Music Trails website following the webinar. And we'll send you links to those 2 websites. So if you want to watch the webinar again, you'll be able to do that. For those of you who are on Zoom, we will also send you a link to a survey that will be conducted following the webinar. We certainly want to get your input on this webinar and others that we'll be offering, and hope you'll give us a review of the things that you learned through this webinar. The Blue Ridge National Heritage Area is a nonprofit organization. We've been operating in Western North Carolina now for almost 17 years. And our mission is to preserve, to grow, and to sustain our natural and cultural heritage in the mountains and foothills of Western North Carolina. A good number of years ago, we partnered with the North Carolina Arts Council to create the Blue Ridge Music Trails of North Carolina, which is an initiative to support local music venues, traditional music venues, and artists in 29 counties across the mountains and foothills. Through this project, we have wanted to strengthen our homegrown music and also make sure that it is preserved for future generations as well. We're hosting this webinar. We actually were going to do this series live and in person, but we're hosting this webinar because of COVID-19 and how it has radically impacted traditional music in our region. And we want to provide you with some tools that we hope will positively help you to respond to this impact. Of course, we can't do any of this alone. We're a partnership organization. And again, I want to thank our sponsor, First Citizens Bank. And I want to introduce to you our amazing partner and friend, Wayne Martin from the North Carolina Arts Council. Wayne.
Thank you, Angie. And hello to everybody out there. I can't see you, but I can feel your energy. So thank you for participating. It's great to see the folks at the Blue Ridge National Heritage Area. They are incredible partners in the Blue Ridge Music Trails project and have really taken it to places that I never dreamed of when we started the project way back in the mid-1990s. I'll just say a little bit about the creation of the trails and how the North Carolina Arts Council got into it. Our mission is arts for all people. I'm talking to you today from Raleigh. Our office is in the Archives and History Building, downtown Raleigh. But we've been working from home. This is, I think, the 14th week. But back previous point in my career, I was the folklife director and would come out to Western North Carolina quite a bit and doing programming and documentation, and had the real honor, privilege of working with some incredible musicians, but great mentors to me personally. Etta Baker from Morganton, Doug and Jack Wallen, ballad singers from Madison County. I had a chance to work with Joe Herron, Bascom Lunsford's daughter, and do a recording project around his work, and with the sons of Marcus Martin, who was a wonderful old-time fiddler from Western North Carolina. And those came out as all those folks who we were working with, we ended up doing recording projects with. That was really, in many ways, gave me my own personal interest in creating a trails project that told the story of music in Western North Carolina through the people who play it in the communities where they live. So context has always been a huge part of the value of the trails. It's music, but it's the stories around music. The guidebook that we produced for Blue Ridge Music Trails, as my colleague Sandra Davidson said, you know, in today's language, it would be called content. Back when we produced it, that wasn't the word we used. But I think that it has. We made an effort to put it into to have the voices of the people who play the music foregrounded. And I think that's a good way to think about, you know, my contribution today will just be to say that telling your story not only through music, but providing a context for who you are, an authentic context, but the interesting stories that give people insight, not only into you personally and as an individual musician, but into this great regional music tradition that you're a part of is really valuable, hopefully to you, but it's valuable to our state, to the region, and to our state when that happens. So thank you again for participating. I want to introduce you to Sandra Davidson, who's our Director of Content Development. She has done some great projects for us, working on our 50th anniversary a couple of years ago, and then Year of Music, which we just got finished with, which was branded Come Here, North Carolina, which she and her colleague Sam Gerwick and many others at our department and many of you participated in that. And that was a huge boost to North Carolina in terms of presenting our music to the nation and to the world, but also to ourselves. So with that, I'll turn it over to Sandra. Thank you.
Thank you, Wayne. Hello, everyone. I am beaming in today from Durham, North Carolina. But I'm originally from a place called Buies Creek, which is a small town in between Raleigh and Fayetteville. And I grew up in a family and in a community that loved telling stories and loved acquiring stories. And I was steeped in that from a really young age. And that was a very formative thing as I made my way into the work that I do today. I have a master's in folklore from UNC, and I was drawn to the field because not only do I appreciate a good story, but I understand the power of stories as ways to bring people together, as ways to generate understanding, give meaning, and transform how we see each other and how we see the world. And when I came to the Arts Council 3 years ago, our organization was making a concerted effort to leverage social media to communicate the importance of the arts in our state to the public. And as Wayne mentioned, we're no stranger to content at the North Carolina Arts Council. Over the course of our history, we've run newsletters, maintained blogs, created multiple cultural tourism publications like the Blue Ridge Music Trails of North Carolina Guidebook. But back in 2017, when I came on board, the Arts Council was specifically interested in developing multimedia content, so videos, podcasts, photo essays, and blog posts that we pushed out through social media, because we recognize just how vital a tool social media is in this day and age. So during my time at the Arts Council, we've collected dozens of artist interviews, created hundreds of blog posts. That's not an exaggeration. The Come Here North Carolina project was rooted in a storytelling campaign where we told a story about North Carolina music every day for all of 2019. And by cultivating our voice in making sure that the stories that we told online and on social media were authentic, were interesting, and were genuine, we've seen a significant growth in the number of people who we're able to connect with through social media, and the types of way that we engage with them, and the depth of our connection with them, and how they engage with us through content on social media. So the COVID-19 pandemic has changed basically everything that we do at the Arts Council in this moment, and it has done the same for the content team. And I'm really excited to guide you through this panel today. One of the things that I am constantly chewing on and thinking about is the fact that the online marketplace right now is flooded with content, because people cannot connect in the same way that we used to do around the arts, which is by experiencing them together in public spaces or at venues. So I think that it can be overwhelming, and I'm speaking from my perspective as the person who oversees the content development in our social media presence, to figure out how to create meaningful content that is unique and offers something new to the ecosystem of social media. And today's panel is about us working through that. So it's our hope that you walk away today with some big picture ideas on how to use social media in your own practice as artists or cultural workers or venue owners. And it's also our hope today that you walk away with some concrete steps for putting those into practice. So there's some guiding questions that we'd like for you to hold on to as you listen to the presentations. And we're going to drop links in the chat on Zoom and also on Facebook throughout. And we're going to be linking out to documents that are referenced to today. And there's a worksheet that we've created for this particular workshop that you'll be able to follow along. And it has these questions on them. But I love for you guys to think about, what does social media really give you the opportunity to do right now? And this can be really specific. It gives you the opportunity to share your music. It gives you the opportunity to share an artist in your community's music. Or it can be bigger picture. It gives you an opportunity to reconnect with your local community. So if you're a venue that is accustomed to marketing and speaking to out-of-town travelers, maybe right now, since people can't really travel, it gives you the opportunity to rebuild relationships with people in your own community. Another question that I would like for you to think about is, what are your strengths? And Wayne kind of talked about this in his opening remarks. So what exactly can you or your organization bring to the table that is distinct and unique and personal? Do you have a family member who taught you how to play your first guitar lick, who's never been online, who you could introduce to your following as a musician? Are you a good storyteller in addition to being a good musician? Do you offer music lessons? The next question that I'd like for you to hold in your mind as you think about this is related to your audience. And, we are in this period of social distancing, and I hesitate to even use the word audience, although it is the common term for how people think about interacting with folks on social media. I like to think of it right now as community. So who in your community is it that you're speaking to online right now? Is it fellow musicians? Is it students? Is it business owners? Is it your neighbors in your community? So think about who it is that you would really like to speak to through social media. And what is it that they are seeking in this moment? Community ties, joy and pleasure and solace through art, connection. I think that because there's so much out there in the social media universe right now, it's important to think really specifically about what it is that people in your network might actually be looking for as you position yourself and create things to share online. And then finally, what are the realities facing your audience? And I mean that in a lot of ways. You know, people are financially strapped right now. Some people have technological challenges, and some people are experiencing virtual fatigue. So these are all things that we would like you to be thinking about as you listen to the panelists today. So before I introduce our first panelist, I just want to say that we really welcome your questions, and you can share them with us in the chat on the Zoom. And if you're watching on Facebook Live, you can also comment on the Facebook live stream. The team who's producing this event today will be sharing those questions with us throughout, and we'll try to get to as many as we can after all the panelists have presented. So our first presenter is a colleague and friend of mine named Zoe Van Buren, who is the director of the Folklife program at the North Carolina Arts Council. She's worked with folklife organizations in New York, in Massachusetts, West Virginia, and in our state since 2013. And before coming to our organization in 2018, she worked with the Music Maker Relief Foundation, where she helped musicians with performance logistics and promotion. And she also worked with the National Folk Festival during its 3 years in Greensboro. Zoe has been in close contact with traditional artists and folklorists around the country during this pandemic, and she's going to talk about some of the trends that she's seeing online that have come up since the arrival of the pandemic. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Zoe, and I'm going to let her take it away.
Thank you so much, Sandra. Hello, everyone. My name is Zoe Van Buren. As Sandra said, I direct the Folklife program at the North Carolina Arts Council. I'm really glad to be here today because I've been watching the field of folk and traditional arts from a few angles over the last few months, and like everyone, I'm really still searching for what the next year of our lives will look like as we rely on remote engagement and social media. So I'd like to offer just a few examples of how I'm seeing traditional artists make this shift to virtual space, but really more than anything, to offer some words of encouragement to each of you and to acknowledge what a strange and difficult thing this virtual world is, especially for those of us who live and work in traditional art forms, which depend so much on togetherness, right? So I want to acknowledge that we're not just talking about what's missing in an economic sense, but really what's missing in a social and a cultural sense as well. And these things go hand in hand. For a lot of you, these important times together are missing and your cultural calendars are completely upended. And that's really hard. It can feel disorienting. So we're all wondering what fills that place in our lives instead. I've been watching traditional artists in the arts industries that support them use the internet not only to find work and salvage programming, but also to stay connected, to regroup and widen their communities, to swap resources and audiences, and even to make space for arts that get overshadowed or excluded in normal times when live programming has to prioritize art forms that really translate well to sort of the big show, to stages and festivals and large live audiences. So I'm going to talk a little about what I'm seeing beyond just music here and also beyond our region, because I think that this experience is so universal to everyone in the arts, and I think we have a lot to learn and be inspired by all around, and there's some lessons to find there. So I want to share just a few examples that have risen above the noise for me and shown why I think there's still so much possibility for traditional arts on social media. So I'm going to share my screen here. One of the first and most innovative uses of social media that I saw early on in the pandemic is this Facebook group called Social Distancing Powwow. It was created as like a crowdsourced virtual powwow space to help Native folks cope with the loss of the powwow season this year. You can see how dancers filmed themselves dancing or drumming, lighting ceremonial fires at home, in nature and sacred spaces. You can see the woman on the left has buffalo in the background. This was an incredible sort of coming together of a national community in a virtual space. And the group has since spun off into a marketplace page as well to kind of help craftspeople recover income. So this was a real sort of grassroots community response that focused first on the arts, dance, song, right? But has since become a full-fledged community action site. They even are now using this community, this newly forged community, to raise awareness about like substance abuse recovery, missing and murdered Indigenous women. So social media was really able to kind of fill the void of traditional cultural events and keep both the creative and the sacred communal life alive and arguably more interconnected than ever for the season, while generating revenue for some artists. Some of you may be familiar with this group. It's a Facebook group, Quarantine Happy Hour. It was started early on in the pandemic by old-time musicians Gabrielle McCrae and Barry Southern. It's an artist-organized old-time music series. Every week they announce a new lineup, and the group now has over 11,000 members generated just in the last 3 months. This is all done on the backs of musicians pooling their audiences and attracting them all to one common space, one single page to follow to get notified whenever they go live. So consolidating communities in one place has really helped them to kind of cut down on the content fatigue for audiences and to pool resources. I think this is a really great example of the power that artists have to activate their audiences when they work together on social media. Some performances earn up to $2,000 in tips, and I've seen nonprofits and philanthropists use the tip jar in this space to make kind of artist relief effort donations as well. And I think the community has really taken off in the comments section. It's like it's finally fun to read the comments section for the first time in my memory. So for me, half of the joy of this series is watching the community, many of whom have only met virtually in the last few months, as they cheer the artists on, tease them, comment on their settings, their instruments. You can see in Travis's here the incredible way he's used the backdrop, right, as context and decoration. And you know, the first video that went up in this series, the entire thing was accidentally filmed sideways, and it was great because people who love you will already forgive you your technological issues as long as they can hear the sound okay. So I see artists all over the internet making the most of everything in the frame of the Zoom video, decorating the background, showing off nature, the sounds of birds and insects, giving audiences a sense of place and who you are. And this is so important right now when you use social media, to take advantage of it as a time to really tell your story on your terms, to give people something to connect to give them a way to kind of regather the community. I want to share this great example here. This was sent to me by a fellow folklorist, Thomas Grant Richardson, who was doing virtual field work with this honky-tonk musician named Scott Hobart in Kansas City. And Scott had a regular gig, which you can see on the left, at a bar called The Ship. And when he started performing through social media, he recreated the entire backdrop of The Ship in his basement for his regular fans to kind of pretend like they were together in the same space. I love this example. Traditional arts organizations are also hard at work trying to not only generate income for artists, but also to use this as a way to sort of re-engage with artists they've connected with in the past. These are two examples from the Alliance for California Traditional Arts Shelter Together series, which features families in quarantine together, showcasing what they do. And this is a really important role for organizations to take on right now. A lot of the artists that they work with don't have large social media audiences. They may have never used social media before in their lives, let alone have a following. So they are sort of lending their platform as a way to drive attention, donations and such toward the artists. So a live stream is really only as successful as the number of eyeballs on it. So that is really sort of an essential role that this organization is playing right now. There's another program I wanted to share. The Virginia Folklife program has created another kind of platform for teaching artists. They call it TRAIN, Teachers of Remote Arts Instruction Network. TRAIN is a national directory of teaching artists, which you all can add yourselves to, trainartists.org. And you can promote your hourly rate and teaching experiences for online workshops and kind of add yourself to a nationally visible platform. I will note, however, that the biggest challenge with this approach and with similar kind of resources like this has been actually getting students to that website and to actually follow through with booking a lesson. So this is the kind of thing where your own skills in marketing yourself are going to become really important. There's also, a challenge with finding artists who are capable of teaching art forms that are accessible to people without specific instruments or materials. And I'll kind of come back to that later. So on that note, I'm seeing that these are really the glory days of do-it-yourself. As we think about continuing traditions, not only of arts performance, but arts participation, what has adapted best to this time? I think DIY arts that can be translated accessibly to all people at low cost and high convenience. When you're teaching, you need your students to have the right materials. So just as an example, in the crafts world or visual arts world, here, Warley artist Sampita Argawal in Cary, North Carolina, is giving a lesson to the Leela School of Dance in the Indian tribal art form of Warley as a way to supplement their dance and music education with sort of a fuller experience of the cultural traditions of India. And you can see this style can be done with nothing more than just a Sharpie and a piece of paper. The pandemic really pushed the dance school to kind of think outside the box. What else could they teach? What else could they highlight beyond dance and music to actually sort of deepen the students' education and connection to the cultural inheritance that they're stepping into, really. They're using this time to lift up art forms that didn't really fit their model well before because they didn't translate well to audiences and stages. And they're doing it very accessibly. So for musicians, I think a similar question can be asked: what else can come along with your music when you're on social media, when you're presenting? Is it place? Is it dance? Is it storytelling? Is it food? Is it costume? What can people mimic themselves from home or join with you in? Whether it's your dialect, your landscape, show it off and tell a deeper story, because this is a time actually where those doors are more open than they would be when you have to go to like a venue and be on that stage in that setting and look the way that the venue makes you look, So lastly, I just want to point out something I'm seeing with audiences in traditional arts events that I think is really worth remembering. This is a small detail, but I think it's notable. Here's Gullah storyteller Aunt Pearlie Sue, who's live streaming from her front porch. She's part of the Quarantine series by the McKissick Museum in South Carolina. And this is a very long performance. And not only were audience appetites for that kind of long form arts experience, I think, enhanced by being at home and not kind of sitting in one seat in a theater. But in the comments section, you can see the audience responding to Aunt Pearlie Sue. I tried to catch it at a time where somebody is using the same verbal traditions of live performance in the Black community that would happen in person, right? Somebody's telling her to take her time. When the commenter tells the performer who may not even be able to see her comment to take her time, she's participating in this experience, in this digital event, in no less real a way than if she were really giving her that audience response in person. A performance is the performer plus the audience. And so how can you kind of cultivate that interaction, that response? So in the end, if the traditional arts are the expressive practices that come out of these shared spaces and shared experiences, and if right now the internet is just about our only shared space, then what we're doing online is cultivating and creating tradition and all of the ways in which folk and traditional arts tell us about what we share between us, tell about more than just one point of view. And if nothing else, I just want to encourage everyone here to think about how those relationships are still happening online, how our programming innovations can embrace and nurture those patterns of sharing and creating culture through art. There's so much potential right now for finding new audiences and deepening old relationships and helping each other participate in the arts right now. It is not perfect. We have not cracked this riddle to create sustainable financial opportunities for all artists and all organizations. This time is especially unfair to those with difficulty accessing the internet. But as you imagine arts on the digital commons, keep in mind that there are so many seeds to plant now and harvest later. And so with that, I will pass you back to Sandra.
Thank you, Zoe. That was great. I really appreciated your bigger point. And I also just am aware that on this call right now, or on this workshop right now, we have both artists and arts presenters and folks who promote the arts. And I love the examples that you shared of artists working together to share their audiences at this time, and also arts organizations or venues finding ways to provide spaces and audiences for artists to perform too. That's one thing that I have been speaking a lot with teaching artists about is there a venue or an arts organization in your community that can help you with a live stream performance? Everybody is trying to figure out how to make revenue during this time, but also artists are trying to make revenue and venues are trying to stay in communication and contact with their own audience. So there are a lot of shared intersections there, and people, I think, are doing work trades to figure that out in this moment. So up next, we are going to hear from Laura Boosinger, who is the Executive Director of the Madison County Arts Council and also a consultant for the Blue Ridge Music Trails project. I imagine a good number of our viewers know Laura also as an excellent musician. She's been studying and performing traditional Southern Appalachian music since she was a college student at Warren Wilson in the 1970s. She performs as a solo artist, as one of David Holt's Lightning Bolts, with her duet partner Josh Goforth, and with the Midnight Plowboys. Today, she is joining us, though, to talk about the importance of knowing and understanding your online community and audience, and how you can translate that understanding into enhanced, meaningful engagement on social media. Welcome, Laura.
Thanks. How's everybody doing out there? So I was sitting here listening to everyone, and I came up with this really great idea. So get your pencils out. The main thing you want to do with any sort of social media is engage your audience. So I took that word apart, like the mother song, M is for the many things you've done for me. The words engage, I think E should stand for entertain. First thing you want to do is grab them, engage them. Darrin Nicholson's going to tell you all about great ways to do that. So E is for engage, N is for giving news. You want people to know what's going on, so use your platforms to get your news out. G is for growing your audience. Growing your audience and also having goals. What do you want to attain with your social media site? Who are you trying to reach? So understand what your goals are and how you're going to grow your audience. This is one thing we really learned through the music trails. A is for authentic content, because people want to see stuff that's real. They can watch any cable TV news channel all night long and see stuff that's not real. So you want to get stuff that's authentic and real. So that would be A. And G is a really important one. That one stands for gags. Yes, I said that. Because you want to put in some humorous content, jokes, giggles. A few months ago, year ago, there was a hilarious video of two dogs whose heads were stuffed in human clothing, and the human hands were out playing banjos and fiddles, and they had big floppy ears, and it was really funny to watch, like cats doing whatever cats do. So I say get your giggles in there and give them some jokes. And of course, E is very important, education. Especially with the Music Trails content, we want people to be educated about what we're doing. I have handled the Music Trails Facebook page as well as the Madison County Arts Council Facebook page for a number of years, and I sort of watch what interests your audience. You want them to come back, you want them to sign up, you want them to be your friend. Some of y'all may not know this, but when folks click on the like or the heart or the caring or whatever, you can actually open those up and it'll tell you whether or not they like you already. And if they don't like you, you need to invite them to like you, because you want them to stay engaged with your content. They might have just come across it for the first time, but if you're not monitoring those responses, then you are missing a chance to, G, grow your audience. So make sure you check back there and invite those people. People like to be invited. We used, that's the Schnauzer sign.
Laura, you've muted yourself.
I was unmuting the Schnauzer. I couldn't get a goat, so I have a Schnauzer. we like to put up things about our heroes in the music trails, things about Doc Watson, always bring a lot of interest. The post I put up this week, they're painting a mural of Earl Scruggs on a building in Shelby, I believe. And it's enormous. It's like 2 or 3 stories high. And of course, everybody wants to see Earl Scruggs. So anything that is significant to your Facebook page that can highlight your heroes, that's a great thing to put up. Of course, videos are fun. I always try to repost Darrin's videos because they're just great examples of music, but he's also really good at storytelling. Jokes, we mentioned that. Banjo jokes get a lot of shares, I have to say. You also want to, we try to update people with things that are on our calendar, events that you might not otherwise check the website, which you should, but you might not, so we put those events on the calendar. Usually it's events, but now there aren't very many events, but artists are fairly good at posting on Facebook and letting us know when they're going to have a Zoom concert or a Zoom lesson or something that we can repost to let our audience know there's live music out there. You just have to approach it in a different way. So we try to keep that up. And if you get it on Facebook and we find it or send it directly to me or other members of the staff, we'll make sure it gets on the website and gets on the Facebook page. If you made a new CD, some artists, Balsam Range has done this recently, Carly Arrowwood, Unspoken Tradition, really good at saying, here's our new single, here's our new CD, here's the release date, here's what it's about. Zoe and Cloyd have had some really timely content with what's going on in the world. So we definitely want to get that stuff out to people. Like I said, Darrin is really good at comedy. Some of y'all might have seen his little shtick with the Cleverleys, and Tim Surratt even came on there, and you looked every day to see what funny thing was going to happen next. I think one thing that people miss on their social media, and I think this is important with our Arts Council and with the music trails, is if you put out an electronic newsletter, make sure you use the function in the newsletter where you can put at the top, view as a web page. That way you can grab that URL, stick it on your Facebook, populate your Facebook with your newsletter, and that drives people to content they might have missed one day on the Facebook page. So try to give them lots of ways to engage. Let's see, also make sure that you're hashtagging your partners. For example, we try to hashtag Come Here North Carolina. We try to hashtag the Scruggs Center if they put something up, or we put something up that has to do with them. So hashtag your partners. You want engagement across all your partners. Also, reshare your other people's information, people that help you. You want things to be relevant. They want them to be timely. And I thought that was telling me to do something. So those are some ideas. I want to show you, I want to share my screen and show you a couple things that you might be missing on your Facebook page. So sharing, there it is, ding, ding. It used to be that this little insight button was right here at the top of the page, but I think that COVID-19 must have taken it away. So if you pull down your menu here, you're going to see a button that says Insights. I'm not sure everybody's looking at this, but check out what you find here. It's pretty good. You see how many page views you've had or previews, what kind of post reach you're getting. This data is great, but if you go down a little further, you're going to actually see which one of your posts is engaged. Sorry, that's the whale. That's not a whale anymore. Which one of your posts is actually engaging your audience. So here are your reaches, and you can see what kinds of information that you're getting here. But over here, you're getting you're seeing how many people have actually seen it. Over here, you're getting how many folks have post-clicked, what kinds of reactions you're getting. And if you could see where you've boosted a post. Boosting posts is really inexpensive, so I'd suggest you do that. So lots of ways to see how your content is really engaging people. This was Josh Goforth doing a live concert at the White Horse the other night. So make sure you go to your insights and see what's going on there. Now I'm going to get off of this, help people. I can't figure out how to unshare, y'all. Somebody help me.
If you go back to your Zoom window, there should be a green button that you just click on again. It'll ask you to stop sharing.
Okay, I'm trying. I'm not getting it. I keep hitting new share. Stop share. There we go. Don't ask me how to run Zoom. Okay, so I think my time's about up, and we want to hear what Darrin has to say. So put your comments in, ask your questions. Make sure you friend us on Facebook, and I'm turning it over to Sandra. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. And I appreciate you giving people that back end window into some of the insight tools that Facebook offers. So as Laura mentioned, Facebook is a great place to track arts programming. It's a great place to share happenings with artists or arts organizations that you have relationships and connections with. I mean, the idea is that the Blue Ridge Music Trails ecosystem is a network of folks. So the more you can do to amplify the work of others in the network, the better. You're building an audience, you're sharing content that's relevant to people who follow your work. And there are ways and tools, really low-hanging fruit tools on Facebook that show you how those strategies are working. The North Carolina Arts Council has added paid promotions on Facebook to the way that we share and distribute some of our hero content, is what we call it. So if we've invested in creating a video series on artists, which we have at different points, we will boost a post. So put $50, even just $50, it could be $30, towards pushing that content out towards an audience. And Facebook has all these mechanisms, because y'all know they track all kinds of information about the people who are on Facebook, that show, you can say if somebody likes bluegrass, if someone likes old time music, if someone likes women who play old time music, you can customize the way that you boost and share that content to people to ensure that more eyes are on it. And you want eyes on your content, but you also want people typing in comments and saying Sandra Davidson, I want you to see this. This is really interesting content. And I mean, social media can be a pay to play kind of ecosystem. So that is something you could think about. And traditionally, or typically, the cost of paying to promote something on Facebook and the outcome is a lot less expensive than the cost of doing actual print advertising. So on to our next presenter. We are going to welcome Darrin Nicholson, an award-winning country, bluegrass, and Americana music, to this panel from Western North Carolina. Darrin is a founding member of Balsam Range and a recipient of 5 International Bluegrass Music Association awards, including Entertainer of the Year, Song of the Year, and Album of the Year. He's a much sought after collaborator who has lent his talents to everyone from Zach Brown to Earl Scruggs. And he joins us today to talk about how he uses Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter to share and promote his work. Welcome to the panel, Darrin.
Hello, everybody. I'm Darrin. I'm really glad to be with you today. Thank you so much. I'm honored that you would ask me to be a part of this. As far as traditional music goes, the only thing that I think is traditional is actually pushing the envelope and trying something different. You know, the people who kind of founded the music we love, that we always we kind of look to as mentors and our heroes of the music, whether it's Earl Scruggs or Etta Baker or whoever, coming out of the Great Depression, or whether it was the recordings of the early days, whatever was going on with the country or socially, they adapted and they took the music with it. And I think that's kind of where the state of our music is right now. You either kind of get on board with the virtual world, or you get left behind. And unfortunately, a lot of artists are going to get left behind in this. And so we have to choose. Right now, it's important for me to remember that statement. Things turn out best for people who make the best of the way things turn out. And so, it's a roll with the flow kind of situation right now. And it's really hard to look around and see what's really working and what's not, because there's so much kind of false information out there. The only thing that I can't tell you really what to do. I can just give you my experience of what I've done during this time with social media and what I see working and what I see not working. One thing is the oversaturation, and I think maybe Sandra talked about it earlier about, people are the virtual world's really getting oversaturated with music right now. So how do I make my content different? How do I make it stand out? And I think quality is the biggest thing. The couple of things that I've chose to do have been with a quality film crew, a quality sound crew, and obviously that cuts into your budget, that cuts into what you're making, but at the same time that differentiates you from somebody sitting in their underwear in their bedroom, playing an instrument or something like that. So there's a great thing called Bands to Fans, and I use that. That's Sam Wharton and Charles Humphrey, and they have really, really good cameras. I decided to do that because, when this thing happened, all of a sudden everybody is, from their home with a tip jar. And it's like, well, what am I going to do that's different? But, Laura really kind of hit on it. The main thing is entertainment, but the being authentic and keeping it lighthearted. We're in a climate right now that's so heavy as far as social things, as far as the virus. People, they've got a lot of negativity shoved in their face as it is. And it's our job, to focus on the music and kind of stay away from that, because we're entertainers. We're not social activists. And the important thing is trying to share the music and trying to share a positive message or a distraction for a lot of people right now. So the things that I have done online, I really, really like doing the live streams where it's more about people asking me questions, because that's the one of the positives of doing the virtual concerts. When you go see a concert and you're 40 rows back and you see the person on stage, you may see them at the record table or whatever. But one of the things that makes social media great is people crave that deeper connection with artists. And they want to ask questions about the music. They want to ask questions about your recording. They want to get a glimpse into your personal life. And that's what makes, that's kind of what sells. I like Willie Nelson. I don't want fans. I want friends. And, people who think whether you are friends with them or not, you want them to think that, that you're invested together in this relationship of they can ask you a question or anything to make the connection a little more personal. And I love what's been shared about sharing other artists right now. I didn't want to do a bunch of live streaming stuff because everybody and their brother, everybody's got a guitar or ukuleles doing that. And so I find myself sharing my friends' music. And, that's one of those things that always comes full circle. That kind of thing always comes back to you. But also sharing some of who your heroes are, carrying this, the legacies of this music, introducing different artists, to your audience and to new people. The big thing right now with the recording industry is streaming, because radio, even satellite radio and terrestrial radio are kind of going away in a lot of ways. And so streaming, one of the ways to get your streaming numbers up is to have other artists share your music. Like Balsam Range, we've recorded several Chris Stapleton songs, and we have a close relationship with Chris Stapleton. He actually plays my dad's guitar. And a while back, we were on one of his playlists that he created for Spotify, and he liked Balsam Range, and all of a sudden our viewer, our Spotify numbers went way up because he's referring us. And so that's how new artists, that's how we're being discovered. Other artists are being discovered because we're sharing it. And as far as that goes, this is a great time for that. I've got a bunch of notes here, but I can't read my own handwriting. I like a lot of what's been said here. I like the comedy element of it. Like what Laura was talking about earlier. And I noticed this before the pandemic, but I've done a lot of serious music over the years that was overlooked. And a lot of times if I put something out that's just silly or something that I think is of no substance whatsoever, that's the thing that always takes off. And I've just noticed this through the years, whether it's a funny song or sharing something. I can put out informational stuff all day and people just are not interested in it. They're just not interested in informational stuff. They're not interested in going to a website. If you don't have somebody's attention within the first 3 or 4 seconds, boom, they're going to the next thing. That's kind of where we are in the electronic world and with people's, attention spans. And so I do think the comedy stuff or just anything that's lighthearted and fun and positive, especially because people are getting force-fed so much negative stuff right now that people are really, they're getting away from social media, or they're getting to the place where they're only going to be seeking out things that are really feeding them. And my wife's at the point where the only thing she looks up is funny videos of cats, and if anything else comes across, she's just done with it. So that I think that's super important right now, and that's a long-term thing. Positivity breeds positivity, and if you want to have fans for a long time, keeping them engaged with what's going on, what's new, keeping it fun for them. People, what's the great is, I guess it's Maya Angelou, the great quote: people don't remember what you said or what you did, but they remember how you made them feel. And I think that's very important right now, and be thinking about that when you're putting a post out or you're sharing your content, and just trying to remain neutral and being all things to all people. That's hard to do, but when you're thinking about what kind of songs you're putting out there, or what you're going to say, or what kind of comedy that you're going to share, when you're running a business, those are all things to really consider. And I like that the uniqueness. That's the thing about organic music, whether it's traditional blues or bluegrass or whatever. It's the real thing, and people like it. They like it when you expose that side of yourself, when you're putting out videos where you're making mistakes, where you're not taking yourself so seriously. That's just a deeper human connection, and that's I just think that's super important right now. I'm trying to find had a couple more notes here. Yeah, what am I selling? Am I selling music? I guess I am selling music, but I'm also selling an experience. I'm selling a feeling, and I'm also selling a community. Like when people went to see the Grateful Dead, they really didn't go because the music was that great. They went because they were in a setting where they could party with their friends. You know what I mean? The Grateful Dead didn't sell music. They sold an experience. Same way online. When you're doing these online things and you're doing Facebook Live, watching people interact within the comment section, you're bringing people together. That's a cool thing too. So you got to be thinking about, I'm not only just selling my product. I'm selling an experience for people. I'm selling a little break in the a little checkout time in the daily grind. That's what you're selling. That window where people would come to a theater to spend a few hours and take a break from their daily life. That's basically what you're doing online. And there's been a lot of good stuff said today. The few things that are important to me is trying not to post stuff all the time, trying not to over post things, making sure when you do post something out, it's quality. If the video content's quality, the substance of what you're talking about is quality, and that's kind of the main things for me. And I'll be glad. I'm sure I'll think of some more stuff as we're going on here. But if anybody has any questions, those are just kind of the things that I've noticed. Using those Facebook analytics is a big thing too, because you can go in and see what kind of stuff's working with your audience and what kind of stuff is not working. And I think that's all I got for the time being. I'll pass.
Thank you, Darrin. I love your observation about sharing things that are really unique and personal, because I think people do want those personal connections with artists. Early into the pandemic, the Arts Council produced a virtual benefit concert where we brought in artists from all over the state with really large followings, and they shared music or unique behind the scenes content that we broadcast and used to produce basically a telethon. And one of the most successfully engaged segments that we shared was created by PD Pablo, who's a hip hop artist from the eastern part of the state, who had a huge hit in the early 2000s about North Carolina. And he didn't do a performance. He didn't share an archival behind the scenes music thing. He shared a music video of him building a fire pit in his backyard, and also cooking a recipe that like an Eastern North Carolina recipe. So it was almost like a cooking show segment, and people really liked that content. So, all right, we have one more panelist and then we will start taking questions. So our last panelist today is Leslie Hartley from the Blue Ridge National Heritage Area. Leslie is from North Carolina. She is the communications manager at the Blue Ridge National Heritage Area. She has more than 10 years of experience doing tourism marketing, and she is going to round out these presentations by offering some tips and tricks for building out an editorial calendar. So a lot of times these conversations about social media can be sprawling and they can get overwhelming, and she is going to offer some concrete ways that you can get organized and be consistent and not let social media take over your life. So one last reminder, we will be taking questions at the end of this. We'll bring all our panelists on. So if you have questions for specific panelists, please share them in the Zoom chat or on the Facebook Live, and we'll do our best to get as many in as we can before we bring this to a close at 2:30. So Leslie, welcome to the panel.
Thank you, Sandra. Thanks for having me. And thanks everyone for joining us today. So I wanted to talk about creating sort of a set list, so to say, or a map of what you would need to post consistently, not necessarily very frequently, but consistently on your social media channels. And one of those things is a content calendar. I know that doesn't sound very sexy, but it's worth your time. Posting on social media on a consistent basis really strengthens your brand and builds a base of followers who are really more likely to engage and then share your content. I know myself, in the past, I've been the only one at another place where I worked doing the social media, and I was doing it on the fly, but we had committed to posting 3 times a week, and you know, on Wednesday at 4 o'clock, and you're like, I need to post something today, and you haven't. You kind of can find yourself in a panic. So I have found through my experience that creating content calendars or editorial calendars really provides that working map to help you find your way and not find yourself in a panic about what to post at the last minute. So mapping out a schedule for what you'll post and when is what a content calendar is. It's really a working document. It can always change, but it helps you see the big picture of maybe what you're going to post for that month. You know, you've got some performances coming up. There's something that a friend is putting out that you know you're in a few weeks and you know you want to share it. Just jotting it down and knowing what you want to post and when really can help you stay on track or the calendar can also dive into the specifics, such as, what copy, a place to put your images and links for that post, so you'll have it there quickly or handy if you want to schedule in advance. I would have to say that if you have a calendar, it also helps align all of your marketing efforts. So maybe you've got a blog post or website updates, and email campaigns, and you've got this spaghetti and it needs to be, well, that's not a good, it could be, instead of it all being in different places or in different silos, a calendar allows you to see everything that's going on coming up in the month, and maybe how you could even create a consistent theme for that month in advance. So kind of helps you align your marketing efforts with your marketing goals. And I also like this part about having a content calendar. It kind of makes you brainstorm. You set aside maybe 30 minutes or an hour once a month is how I do it. And it helps me brainstorm some ideas in advance. And once I get that done, I then write my copy, select the pictures or the images that I'm going to use. And it gives me a chance to also check my punctuation and my writing, my spelling before I put something out there. So it helps out in a lot of ways. It might sound like a pretty big commitment, but it's really not that much. It's just sitting down and spending just a few minutes, like I said, 30 minutes to an hour working it out. It'll pay off in the end. So one of the things, though, you might be thinking is that sounds so potentially stale, or it's not on the fly, and you definitely need to keep it flexible, stay flexible. I think that taking care of your long-term vision and plan and pre-scheduling your posts, or at least having a calendar of what you're going to post, allows you to pivot quickly. If something pops up, you can handle one-offs much easier and stay on brand. And I guess I would also say that your calendar doesn't really need to be some complicated thing. It could be in a Word document or a spreadsheet. There are project management apps out there that you could use, or even just Post-it notes and you move things around on a wall. It doesn't need to be complicated. You can keep it simple. And so just to get started, I would recommend creating a goal for yourself or for your brand. Determine how frequently you would like to post, or what would be consistent, and then plan in advance and be ready for those timely things that will just pop up and you want to definitely be a part of, that you just had no way of knowing a month in advance, but everything else is taken care of at that point. So I'm happy to share with you if you would like some examples. I can email them to you, or if you'd like to request that, I'll also pop in my notes from today. But I'm happy to help, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Leslie.
Thank you, Sandra.
So, I think you offered some really great points about staying organized with social media. The Arts Council has invested in a social media management software called Sprout Social, which allows us to schedule ahead posts on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And I can show you what that looks like on the back end. I'll share my screen really quickly and then we can go into questions. But here you'll see this, I think, is last month. And this shows all of the things that we posted on social media. So over here in the right-hand corner, you'll see that I manage the North Carolina Arts Council's Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter there, and Come Here North Carolina's. And there's a great feature in this where you can literally add a photo or add text for what it is you want to add. So I could say, please tune in to workshop on social media. And I can say I want to publish it on the North Carolina Arts Council's Twitter and on the North Carolina Arts Council's Facebook. And then the software offers a great feature where you can say, okay, I want to do this on Wednesday. And the tier that we have invested in at the Arts Council, which is the middle tier, which I believe is about $1,000 a year. It shows you what is the best time to publish this content for engagement. So this is something that made a lot of sense for us as an organization to invest in, because we publish so much online and it makes it really easy for us to streamline our content pushing out across all channels. And another thing that Leslie mentioned, you know, I keep an ongoing list of significant dates in the Arts Council or Come Here North Carolina's history. So last Friday was the anniversary of Nina Simone's childhood home being designated a national treasure. And I have a Dropbox folder and a folder on my external hard drive with photos documenting our relationship with that home over the last 2 years. So here is Come Here NC's Instagram. Maybe can you guys see that now? Or are you still looking at Sprout Social? Okay, and you know, we just easily plug and play, like here are some photos from the time that we have spent programming that house, raising awareness about the house, and in the caption, we tell the story about all the things that have happened in the last couple of years in relationship to that. So if you're an organization dedicated to promoting the story of Earl Scruggs, for instance, you could always make sure you have something on your calendar. It can be your paper calendar. It can be your digital calendar that, like, today is the day that Earl Scruggs was born. And you could always make sure that you share a bit of content on that particular day. So there are just some strategies where you can look at things that are important to your organization and make sure that you're reflecting those in how you do social media. So let's bring everybody back in. And I will open this up to questions. All right, and if all of the panelists will unmute. All right. So the first question really quickly, does Sprout Social allow you to add alt text to your photos? Alt text is something that you add to photos that you share online, which makes them screen readers. So people with visual disabilities could be scrolling through Instagram, and if they can't actually see the image, their screen reader will read a description of what that actual image is. Unfortunately, Sprout Social does not have that built-in feature yet. Let's see, what else do we have? All right, so we have been asked, do we have opinions on which social media platform works best when engaging a college demographic? For example, an online event streaming a band either on Instagram Live or Facebook Live. So
this is Darrin here. I'd chime in on that. I would definitely say for college, it would be Instagram Live. My son's 18 and Facebook is for people who are really old, like 25 to 35, and that's, their Instagram, Twitter, that's kind of where the younger, generation, that's kind of where they're going. But if you're in the bluegrass world, a lot of your fans are going to be older and the traditional bluegrass world, and they're going to be on Facebook, So
Yes.
that's just that's what I've seen.
Similarly, I think it kind of also depends on what the content is that you're trying to stream. So there's kind of layers there. So if you are watching an entire concert on your cell phone, maybe you're less likely to sort of stay engaged with it because other stuff is popping up and it's a smaller screen, and you might prefer to kind of host something like that on Facebook where someone can put it on their laptop and just kind of let it be. But if those kids aren't on Facebook in the first place, they're never going to see it. So there's different, I think, priorities to pick from in that conversation.
When the Arts Council produced Under One Roof, which is that virtual benefit concert that we spoke of, the partners who we worked with published the live stream on Facebook Live, but also on a streaming application called Twitch, which is a virtual interface that's entirely devoted to live streaming performances. So, you know, I think that what I have observed in the last 3 months in particular is very swift innovation and utilization of live streaming on both Instagram and Facebook and other platforms. But I would agree that audience, that college age audience right now is more likely to be on Instagram looking for content like that than on Facebook. Let's see.
I will say that I know some college age musicians that are definitely posting on Facebook. And I'm not sure if that goes on Instagram or not, but I know that that is the platform they're using a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I'll second that. And it depending on the genre that you're in, I mean, all of the sort of old time community groups that I'm aware of are Facebook groups, you know. So regardless of age, that's where that audience is going to be.
Mm-hmm. And I think there is nuance to the strategy there too, because if you are, for instance, an arts organization that's presenting a live stream like we are, and we're running this through Zoom, but we're also running this through Facebook. We have devoted people on our staff right now who are fielding comments on Facebook for us and fielding comments on Zoom for us to make sure that we engage with people in both ecosystems. If you're an individual artist who's running your own live stream and you want to make sure that you have that interactive component with the actual live stream, you know, you do probably just want to pick one, and then you could always publish your content elsewhere. One other thing that I'll say, which I've noticed in conversations coming up a lot about live streams, and Darrin, I'd be interested to hear you speak to this, but a lot of artists who are sharing their musical performances with, you know, if you were to say like, okay, I'm going to do a performance for the Arts Council on Friday, June 28th, a lot of artists are now limiting how long that performance is going to stay up on that presenter's digital platform, because they don't want to dilute their presence on the internet by having all these different versions of their performances all over the place. Darrin, have you encountered that? Are you thinking about things like that in your work?
Yeah. This is such a strange thing. I don't even know where to start with this, but the whole live streaming world, like I say, I think quality is the main thing there. Let me think of the best way to put this. They don't want to leave the content up for a long time, because why would anybody go to your virtual tip jar and pay for new content? You know what I mean? You're constantly wanting to keep that current. You don't want anything to get stale. Leave it on there for a few days, take it down, and then actually instead of putting something out there every day, make it an event. So when in 3 or 4 weeks, when you do something again, there's some hype to it, that there's something unique about it. People got something to look forward to. And the other part about that is too, we got to be thinking about like Facebook, Instagram, all these things. They block our content to a certain extent, because they want us, they want to make money off of us. They want us to buy the ads. They want us to buy to boost the post. You know what I mean? I mean, I've got 5,000 friends. I'll put out a picture, 35 people saw it. And that's Facebook doing their job. And then if I give them $5, all of a sudden, look, 500 people see it. If I give them $10, 1,000 people see it, you know? So that's the other thing to think about too, when you're using these, and it doesn't cost a whole lot. You can spend a few bucks boosting a post and it makes quite a bit of difference. But I think it's a good idea to pull that stuff down and then have something, you know, current that's coming up. That way people don't get, you know, they don't get bored with it.
And I'll say that, you know, one strategy that I have learned as we've done some live streaming events is that if you as an artist or as a presenter, or you're going to use Instagram Live or you're going to use Facebook Live to share a live stream, what you want to do with anyone who's affiliated with that performance, be it the artist or be it an organization that you know have a shared mission with, as soon as that performance begins broadcasting, you want to have already asked that artist and, you know, sister organizations to share it immediately to make sure that people see that it's live, because that's that type of audience building where the more people see, oh, this is live, so and so is performing now, the more likely folks are to tune in, and it doesn't get lost in all of the noise out there online.
I'd like to say that's true. I try to do that when I know people are going to be live, is I try to go to my Facebook and share it to the Music Trails page and say live now. And that really helps our engagement. Also, I'm going to ask Darrin, what do you think about when you live stream a concert and you archive it to YouTube? Because there's so much great content on YouTube. And I know some artists, Willie Nelson, I can't see Willie Nelson very often, but I do want to go on YouTube and see whatever I can see, even if it's Ray Charles and Willie Nelson from the middle 70s. So do you ever do that, Darrin?
I do. Balsam Range is they take a little different approach to it than I do. It's they won't put anything out to YouTube that is, they don't want to oversaturate YouTube because they feel like that's going to keep people from coming to live shows, or that's you know, going to keep people from doing the virtual thing or keep people from buying the music. And you don't want a bad homemade version of something out there when you're trying to sell a single that's a really good slick studio version of it. Now, on the other hand, there's a grassroots movement to where it's like, hey, let's put everything out there. Let's put all the mistakes out there and let's put everything on YouTube, because that's just going to grow people. So it really depends on what you want to do. It's like, on one hand, let's do less and anything that comes out be super high quality. And then on the other hand, the grassroots approach is like, let's put everything out there, even the crappy stuff, you know? And so I kind of put everything out there, you know, and cast a big net, and I put the mistakes and all, and I kind of try to take the more personable approach for my solo stuff. But there's also value in not putting everything, you know what I mean? It's like people that post pictures of their food all day, you know, it's like
Overexposure.
You know what I mean? Oh yeah, I'm done with that.
Exactly what you said, Darrin, about giving your fans a glimpse of your life. I mean, that's one of the cool things about live concert performances, where something funny happens and you weren't there to see it, right? So it shows up on YouTube. Well, for example, I never saw Ray Charles and Willie Nelson play together, or Johnny Cash and Louis Armstrong. I mean, I'm super glad that stuff's out there on YouTube. I can see where you would curate it, but that's a good conversation for maybe another webinar, is what do you put out there on another platform and keep it?
Well, I think it all comes so much down to knowing your audience and
Exactly.
knowing who this is going to, because if you are aware that you're putting stuff out into kind of like a generalized audience, and you may or may not really be familiar with who they are and where they're coming from, or if they've experienced your work before, you're going to want that to be higher quality stuff, because you need to impress them and wow them on the first taste. If it's within like a designated sort of shared interest group, or if it's to a fan base that you have experienced being very active and and sort of giving on your profile, I think that's where that kind of more lo-fi, do it at home kind of content goes further, because then they're like, this is the thing I can't get by going to your show. Like, this is a reason to come and revisit you at home in your space with your jokes and your family and your dogs coming into the, into the scene, and that way, like, that will create that intimacy. And with that kind of community, you want intimacy. But if you're just kind of putting it out into the world, you need to have higher quality stuff, and you need to mix up what it looks like so that people don't just see the same backdrop every time, the same, and think it's the same video posted 20,000 times.
Exactly. I think a big part of that is like where you are in your career too, like self-identification, like where am I? Like with Balsam Range, perception is reality. If you take a band like Balsam Range, who's been the entertainer of the year a couple of times, and they're playing for tips in their living room, all of a sudden that doesn't look like entertainer of the year to me. I don't see James Taylor on there playing for tips. You know what I mean? And and as a buyer, as a market buyer, you look at the bands that are putting out quality videos and quality things, as opposed to somebody, like I said, sitting in their underwear in their living room playing music. So perception is reality too. So I think if you're at a place where you want to be taken seriously, you have to you can't just put it all out there in some ways. But then there's two different business models here, and they've both been very successful. You take a guy like Tony Rice, who he never had a picture made with a fan. He never went to the record table. And that's what made him popular, was there was this mystique about him because he was not accessible. And then you've got other people who will sit there at the record table and sign autographs for 1,000 people, and they'll have their picture made with everybody. And so it really, you need to identify what kind of, how you want to present yourself too. I think that's a big part of it. Like, how do I want to be perceived? Do I want to be perceived as a people person, or do I want to be, like Tony Rice? He's kind of like Bigfoot. He's never been successfully photographed, but it worked for him, and so it really, and part of it's your personality too. You can't manifest a personality if you don't have one, and so, I mean, that's just kind of, some people have a personality and some people don't. And you got to figure out how to use all these tools within that, like identify really what you are.
Well, and we're running out of time, and we have another comment that I'd like to share and have our panelists respond to. And this comment is oriented more towards maybe some of our arts presenters and arts nonprofits. So we have a comment from Lois in Bryson City, who is discussing making artist directories more prominent on presenter websites, especially during this time, and maybe integrating not only their presence on websites, but also translating those also to Facebook. Zoe, Angie, Laura, do you guys want to talk a little bit about how you're thinking of artist directories in this moment?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that
Go ahead.
Oh, I don't know if my video is showing up on your screen. It is? Okay. I think that's a really great comment, because I think right now, especially while maybe the bandwidth for like paid performances is kind of short, I think it's especially important for artists to be getting their name out there attached to their other skill sets as well. So like when we released the Millennial Traditional Artist Directory, we included, and it's similar with the Blue Ridge Traditional Artist Directory, it includes sort of an availability statement. And I think that maybe this is the time to kind of revisit the breadth of that statement and say, like, are you somebody who could also be hired to, manage the back end of a Zoom event like this? Like, what are the other sort of arts industry things that are happening right now? And things that artists themselves would be very capable of doing. Or are you, if you didn't list that you're interested in teaching, are you interested in teaching now? So I think just really making sure that when we're showcasing artists, when we're putting their capacities out there, we're thinking broadly about all of the different roles that artists can fill in this moment, and how it might not just be about performance, but also about work and, you know, and teaching and whatever else you might need.
That's great. I think that's a great point, Zoe. We have a fairly large traditional artist directory, and actually we're adding some new younger artists here over the next several weeks. But I think exactly what you're saying, polling those and finding out how they broadly they are willing to go with what their services are. Most of the, you know, our artist directory, the earliest ones, it's at least 10 years old. But I also think one of the things that we try to do is make sure that those artists stay in the forefront with our e-newsletters. We have a Intune, which is our Blue Ridge Music Trails e-news. Try to focus on some artists there from the traditional artist directory. We work with WNCW on podcast, where we focus on styles of music, but also focus on specific artists who have played specific styles. And then also try to put that information out on Facebook. But I always think there's room to more broadly make sure that we're getting that information out there.
Also, Angie, on our Facebook or website, there are featured artists.
That's correct.
So those rotate. So people are
Yeah.
drawn out from that directory and are featured. And in Lois, if you have a video, just send it to us and we will put it on. We've been putting stuff on Facebook and as well as produced videos on our website that artists are doing. So we have the platforms. Just shoot us the content, y'all. That's our job, is to promote artists in Western North Carolina.
Right.
And one thing that I'll add too, you know, and this is something that we should probably consider as we, you know, when we share an artist profile or an artist performance online, most of the time we're either sharing it directly from their social media page, so people can automatically take that extra step and then follow that artist if they want to. But if we have places that aren't social media where we're promoting artists, like blogs, we could always just take one extra step and say, follow Darrin Nicholson at such and such, such and such, such and such on Facebook.
Yes, please, at MySpace.
Yeah.
Please follow me on MySpace.
But I think, you know, that's one way we as arts organizations can also help grow other artists' presence on platforms on social media. I guess so we have 3 minutes and I'm not seeing any new questions in the chat. So I think my last question for y'all, and I guess this is like a 240 characters or less time frame, but how has the way that you've thought about and used social media changed since the pandemic?
I'll just say something as an arts council person. I agree with what Darrin says. It's a really heavy time and anything you can do. I loved his comment, check out time from the daily grind.
Yeah.
So there's been lots of very creative arts-based videos, dance, music. There's an incredible Shape Note singing video with people from all over the world. I don't know how they did that and did that in sync. I'm learning out of characters. But I look for creative things from all over the world and put them on my Arts Council page just to give people a little breath of fresh air.
Thank you. Darrin, do you want to add anything to that about how you've changed, how social media has changed for you since the pandemic?
Yeah, social media is kind of like a two-edged sword for me. You know, I have to use it for my business and I just kind of have to make the best of it. Like, it's obviously, you know, this is the way our world is going, you know, the virtual world, and, you know, things are never going to be the same again. So you just got to kind of adapt and make the best of it and try to keep things positive. And that's about all I got.
Well,
Darrin, when you add the stories to your songs about different people in your life you learn them from, or something about an instrument, I think that is splendid content. So I'd like to just give you a shout out for that. It's really engaging, and I feel like I'm just sitting there and you're telling me something really personal. It's great.
well, we're going to be sharing resources from this workshop. We've actually included a link already in the chat on Zoom and also on Facebook. The Arts Council will be sharing some materials that support the stories that you've heard today. And I think the biggest takeaways that I have after listening to everyone is it's really important to share authentic, meaningful content during this time. And it's really important to build community around what you're sharing on social media by sharing other people's work, by sharing work that is connected to yours, by building community in a period when we're so distanced from our own. So next, we have 2 more of these workshop series, and I just want to give a shout out to those before we sign off. The next one is Wednesday, July 8th. It'll be the same time, 2 o'clock. And on that one, we're going to go in more depth into the video strategies for this period of time. And there'll be some technical related training that we offer during that workshop, and also some case studies from artists and arts organizations who talk about how they're using video. We've actually touched on a lot of that today too. And then the final workshop will be the following Wednesday. And there we will be talking more broadly about some innovations that we're seeing across the music industry in response to this pandemic. And those will be both case studies and things that artists and arts organizations are finding successful, and also people sharing things that aren't working and sharing concerns that they have about how to proceed and navigate during this time. Because, you know, we've all sort of hit at this, we're not sure how long this is going to go on, and there is no quick fix. So we just want to stay in dialogue and be in communication, and that's what these are for. So thank you again for joining us today, and we will see you hopefully in 2 weeks.
Thanks for having me. Thank you all so much. It's been great.
Thanks everyone for joining.
Thank you. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.